Hey everybody. We're at day 19. So this is the recording for day number 19. Listen, I am still grateful to you, to all of you for being a part of this process. Listen, my prayer is that as you're watching these videos, even if you're watching them with your spouse, yee-hoo! I pray that as you're watching these videos that you're hearing something, probably something that you've already heard. Somebody has already told you about it, but I pray that as you're watching these videos, listen to the videos, that God speaks something to your heart. And it could be something this big that makes all of the difference in your life, in your marriage, in your family. You know, sometimes we have to hear things over and over. Sometimes that's God's way of saying, okay, they need it again. And sometimes, you know, that's just God's way of giving us a refresher course, because maybe we have slacked off in doing some of the things that we know that we ought to do. You know, that happens, but that's not an excuse to allow it to continue to happen. You know, because when we allow things like that to continue to happen, when we allow slippage to happen in certain areas or in any area of our lives, then there are consequences that result from those things, and a lot of those consequences we don't like. You know, like we don't like what certain slippage does in the state of our marriages, and we don't like what those slippages do in the state of our family and even in our very own lives. So we can't make an excuse for anything. And we're not making excuses here. We are being honest. Listen, I thank you guys for being honest with yourselves, for being honest with God in this process, for being honest with your spouse, for being honest with your family, with your children in this process. And I thank you for the humbleness, even to want to grow, to want your marriage to be better, to want your family to be better, to want your life to be better, because not only do you deserve it, you do deserve it, it's available to you. It's available to you. It's yours. You know, God does not desire marriage to be a burden. Marriage is not a burden, and it was never designed to be such a thing. Like burden and marriage, those things don't fit. It's like putting a square peg into a circle hole. It doesn't fit. Yeah, so I thank you guys for taking this journey, for being faithful. And listen, if for some reason you have fallen off, guess what? You can always get back on the right track. You can always get back on the right track. You know, if you started and you've watched some of the videos and you've put some of the things in practice, but you haven't watched everything and you haven't been diligent about putting everything that you're hearing into practice, listen. It's never too late. As long as there is life in your body, as long as there's breath in your body, you still have the opportunity to go back and say, okay, this is where I missed it at, and so this is where I'm starting from. You know, so don't beat yourself up if you've had a setback, or, you know, if something got off track in this process. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just go back to where you were and continue to move forward. That's all we have. That's all you can do. That's all you can do, because we don't want you to beat yourself up for a mistake or an error, or, you know, whatever it is. Don't beat yourself up for it, because when you beat yourself up over anything, it actually keeps you in that place instead of allowing you to move forward. And this is a progressive process, so we are progressing forward. We're progressing forward. Okay? So day 19. Day 19, we're going to talk about, let's talk about it. What are we talking about? We're talking about those conversations that we know has got to be had. We've got to have these conversations, whether it's with our husband, whether it's a conversation that has to be had with our wives, or a conversation that we have to have with the family. We're talking today about those conversations. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. As with everything, sorry about that, but as with everything, there's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes we can find ourselves in a place where something happens and boom, it's like a nuclear bomb goes off in our life, in our marriage, or in our family. Something happens and we go here. We go straight to 100. And whoever's around or whoever is involved in it, sometimes our knee-jerk reaction, and we don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction, but sometimes our first reaction or our first response is to, no, we're going to talk about this right now. Y'all know we do that. We do that. No, we are not talking about it later. We're talking about it right now. We're talking about it right now while it's fresh on my mind, while my emotions are on 100, while I'm not thinking clearly or as clearly as I can possibly think. We're talking about this right now. We do that. Now, step back from the situation for just a moment and think about all of those things. Typically, when we talk about things in the heat of the moment, we end up making the situation worse than it probably would have been had we taken some time, cooled off, gotten a level head, and then approached the situation. Now is not always the best time to talk about it, whether it's a conversation with your spouse or whether it's a conversation with your family, with your children. Now is not always the best time to talk about it. Why? Because when you have conversations in the heat of the moment, your emotions are inflated and truth is actually deflated. Because when you're having conversations in the heat of the moment, most of the time your conversations are coming from an emotional place. And a lot of times mixed in with that is a level of offense. You're offended, you're hurt, or you're disappointed, or you are whatever fill in the blank that emotion is. And sometimes whatever that emotion is, it is coupled with offense. And whenever offense is present, your vision is not clear. Whenever offense is present, your vision is not clear, meaning your perspective on the situation is not going to be clear. You could think 1000% that you're right, but whenever offense is present, and we have to be honest about offense. We have to be honest about offense because there are certain things that offense won't allow us to admit to if we don't first admit that we are offended and that we did take offense to whatever it was that happened. Do you know another name for offense? Pride. When we get offended, we go into our feelings, we get into ourselves, and pride takes over the conversation. We put up walls of defense, and so what actually starts to happen is instead of us engaging in a calm conversation, and when I say calm, I'm not talking about the level of our voice. I'm talking about a meeting of the minds, basically. Whenever offense is present, then we become defensive. So everything that you tell me, you can say the sky is blue. And what I will hear is, oh, the sky is blue. And I will become offended by that because I think the sky is green or whatever color I'm thinking that the sky is. And so when you say it, even though you did not say it with any malice, or the person did not say it with any malice at all, when offense and pride is present, what you hear is the total opposite of the meaning of what was said. You know, a lot of times I've heard this, and I've even said this myself, that it's not how you say something. I'm sorry, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. The truth is, now I'm going to tell you something. That little statement there, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Oh my goodness. If we realize the amount of pride that it takes to internalize that statement, I don't believe that we would even want to use it again. No, because the truth of the matter is, it's not what you say or how you say it, it's how I hear it. It's how I hear it. It's how I hear it. And do you know what determines how I hear what you say, or how you hear what somebody else says? Where you're sitting. And what do I mean by where you're sitting? I don't mean like, I'm sitting on the floor right now. I don't mean, well, if I'm sitting on the floor, I'm going to hear differently versus if I'm sitting in the chair or if I'm sitting in the car or what. No. I'm talking about where you're sitting in your heart. Where you're sitting in your heart makes all of the difference in what you hear. Where you're sitting in your heart makes all of the difference concerning what you hear. If you're sitting in pride, if you're sitting in offense, and listen, it could be this much of pride. It could be this much offense. But where you're sitting, if in that same place that you're sitting is pride or offense, I don't care. Listen, the person that is speaking to you could be the most loving person, the most angelic person. The way that they speak could be, just a sound from heaven. But if you're sitting in the seat of pride, if you're sitting in offense, even what you hear from heaven is going to be offensive to you. Even the good that you hear is going to be offensive to you. Someone can be telling you the absolute truth, and they could be telling you the absolute truth in love. I'm talking about the kind of conversation that you would want to have with somebody. Oh my goodness. They could be it could be so much love in the conversation. Their tone, their attitude, their everything, their body language, everything could spell LOVE. But if you are sitting in the seat of offense, if you're sitting in the seat of pride, no matter how much love is splattered on the table. You can have a buffet full of love. I'm talking about a conversation wrapped in love, made of love, solid love, pure love. But if you're sitting in the seat of offense or you're sitting in the seat of pride, how you hear that thing, no matter how good it is, no matter how good the intentions of that thing is, it's going to determine how you receive it. It's not what I say. It's not even how I say it. No, it's how you perceive it. And see, this is a gut check thing. This is a gut check thing because it puts the responsibility back on me. Meaning, whatever you say to me doesn't determine, what you say to me doesn't determine how I receive it. So you can say whatever it is that you say to me, however you say it to me. But I hold the responsibility, I hold the power, I hold the authority as in how I receive it. And if I'm sitting in pride, or if I'm sitting in offense, then I'm going to take offense to what you say, even though what you say is the truth, regardless as to how you say it. Regardless as to how you say it. That's my responsibility. That's my responsibility. My responsibility is whatever you say is to make sure that that my heart is sitting in the right place. And as long as my heart is sitting in the right place, guess what? I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be offended. It does not mean that what you say may not cause me to think twice or be baffled or something like that. But to be offended or to be in pride, no. I might be a little... No, I'm not weird. I'm not weird. I actually love correction, but correction doesn't feel good. It never feels good. I don't care who is doing the correcting. At least in my life, I don't care who's doing the correction. I can love them, with the love of Jesus Christ. Correction. I don't believe that I've ever been corrected, and I'm talking about it just felt so good to my flesh. So I was like, thank you, Jesus. No, correction doesn't feel good, but correction is always good. It doesn't feel good, but it's always good. And do you know why a whole lot of times we're not able to love correction? Like, we get offended when correction comes? Well, that's your answer right there. We get offended at correction because we're sitting in a place of offense. We're sitting in a place of pride, and that's how we're hearing what's being given to us. So we have to check that. We have to check that. So now everything doesn't need to be talked about in the now, meaning in the moment. And we've already talked. That's one reason it doesn't need to be talked about, is because we need to check the condition of our heart. Whether you're the speaker or the listener, your heart, the condition of your heart, the attitude of your heart, where you're sitting. So if you're the speaker and you're sitting in a place of pride, or you're sitting in a place of offense, out of your mouth you're going to spew pride and you're going to spew offense. And none of those things have anything to do with love. And if you're the listener and you're sitting in the seat of pride, or you're sitting in the seat of offense, you're not going to hear any truth that comes from out of the speaker's mouth. You're not going to hear it. You're not going to receive it. You're going to be defensive to it. So we've got to check the attitude of our heart. And that's one of the reasons why we can't always have conversations in the now. We can't always have conversations in the now because it's not always beneficial. While you may have the opportunity to have those conversations in the right now, it's not always beneficial. You know, Paul says, everything is available to me. It's lawful for me. But is it profitable? Is it beneficial? No, everything isn't beneficial to us. And always having conversations in the now, that is not beneficial for our marriage. It's not beneficial for our family. It's not beneficial for our lives. So we have to be mindful of those things. We have to be mindful of those things. Now, when the attitude of our heart is in the position so that we are sitting in the seat of love, and we are, dwelling in that place of love, meaning we've had a cool down period. Our perspective changes, even if we were sitting in the place of pride or sitting in the place of offense. How do we get rid of those things so that we can have the conversation that needs to be had? Taking a time out. And when I say taking a time out, I don't just mean, I just don't mean walking away from the situation or taking a drive, but it could be all of those things. What you have to do while you're in the cool out phase, though, is you need to have a real conversation with yourself, and you need to have a real conversation with God. And why do I say that? Number one, I say that because your heart has to get to the place to where you can go back and have the conversation that needs to be had. And the second reason is, have you ever been in a place where you wanted to talk about something, or you knew you needed to talk about something, and you stepped away from the situation, analyzed it clearly, and when you came back, you had a whole totally different perspective as to what just happened? Well, see, that's what happens during the timeout phase. During the timeout phase that you're going to have with yourself, and be honest with yourself and say, okay, I got to get pride out of here. I got to get offense out of here. The next thing that you have to do is have that conversation with God. Okay, Lord, this is how I see it. This is how I saw it. So this is how I felt when he said this. This is how I felt when she said that, or when he did that, or when she did that, or whatever. Have a conversation with God. And then, because sometimes we have to get it out. We have to get it out. And once it's out, then we're able to have a clear head so we can go back in the situation. I don't want to say hint, hint, but here's a pointer. Don't just get it out in front of your spouse or get it out in front of the kids. No, get it out in your closet. Whether your closet is your car as you take your time out drive someplace, or your literal closet, or your prayer closet. But you've got to have that time out. Get it all out. Get it all out. Get all of those emotions out. And once you get them out, okay, God. So that's how I felt about the situation. Now tell me how you saw the situation. Because all of us see things, 20 people can look at the same thing, and every single 20 person can tell you something different. Will tell you that they saw something different. So it's the same way when we're having those conversations, or when a situation happens. We need to take time to step back, get a clear head, get a calm head, and get the right perspective. So after you've blurted everything out to God as to how you saw things and how it made you feel and all those other kinds of things, then you need to ask God, so show me what you saw. Tell me what you saw. And listen, I'm living proof that that's not always a nice process. No, because what happens a whole lot of time is God be like, no, but that's what you saw, but that's not what happened, Cindy. No, yeah, that's what you heard, but that's not what was said. Yeah, see, that's how you felt, but that's not what was intended. And so you're sitting there, or at least I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay. And so now me and God are on the same page, and it's like, before I even can go out to have the conversation, it's like, Lord, I got to repent first, because I just went to 100 when 10 wasn't even required. Yeah, so Lord, I'm sorry about that. And now I have the right frame of mind, and I have the right attitude to go and have that conversation. And usually the conversation starts off with, I'm sorry. But it works. It works. Taking the time, get your heart in the right seat. Get yourself in the right seat. Make sure we don't have any stragglers like pride and offense. And then go to God and say, now tell me, God, tell me what you saw. Tell me what you heard. Tell me what I was supposed to get from this. Give me your perspective. And listen, when you get God's perspective on something, that's like, end the story, good night. Now all of that huffing and puffing that was inside of you, it's like vapor. It's gone. It's gone. But I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth that you've got to do these things if you're going to have the successful marriage, the strong marriage that God wants us to have, and be able to do all of the things that God has already, planned out for our lives and our marriages and our families. We've got to do these things. And then, well, I'm actually going to stop it right there. Every conversation is not to be had in the now. It's not about what someone else said or even how they said it. This is a pride buster here. It's not what somebody else said or even how they said it. No, it's how you received it. It's how you received it. The work is on you. The responsibility is on you. And the responsibility is on us. As the receiver, the responsibility is on us. It's a pride buster. It's a gut check. God is gut checking us. And don't think